What's up, everybody, and welcome back in what feels like another 2-month absence from discussing the challenge. As you guys know, another episode's happened. We're here to kind of give our brief thoughts on it, but the biggest talking point coming out of last week's episode just so happens to be the genesis of today's topic for our episode of this podcast. So without further ado, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the rather dumb decision that one competitor made last week. But I mean, he's in good company. There's lots of dumb decisions that have been made on the challenge.
Well, yeah, guys, this is if you paid attention to last week's episode, you kind of have like probably an idea of as to what we're referring to. But essentially, today's topic is going to be the dumbest decisions in challenge history. So that could be like probably mainly politically speaking and like within the game. But not to get too off base from what we just mentioned, though, because that's obviously the biggest talking point at the moment we should probably get into. Now, I mean, with what's being said, can it be called a dumb decision, or could it just be under the lines of somebody just flat out self-sabotaging intentionally at this point? Because that's kind of now that the dust has settled a little bit, that's where my head's kind of at a little bit with the whole thing. If you look it through the lens and suspend your disbelief, on surface, it's a dumb decision. But if you look between the lines, to me, it kind of just looks like somebody just didn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, I'm still like reading through all the comments and all the articles and all the perspectives that people have on this, because it just makes no sense to me to squander all of the safety that you have in this game. I mean, even if I was in Avery's shoes, I would have budged and just folded so I didn't have to go into elimination. But at least I understand that she has so few people that she's connected to, and Derek is like a really trusted friend. So yeah, at least I can understand why she would push hard to work with Derek moving forward and to keep him safe.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, too, from a gameplay perspective, Avery's side of the coin makes perfect sense. I mean, she wanted to throw in what? It was she wanted to throw in Kylan and Casey against Darrell and Jody, is it, right? That was the scenario we were looking at, which makes perfect sense. You basically take out two strong players on one team. Whereas, like, Derek's obviously proven himself to be pretty underrated on All-Stars 4, but him and Aviv, they both don't really have connections, and within the lens of like the flagship are relative born-again rookies. I mean, I know Derek did a couple All-Star shows, but amongst this crowd, he feels like more of a rookie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Aviv is like essentially a rookie. So it makes plenty sense if you were looking to go strong here to pit those two strong teams up against each other and send one home. So with that in mind, Tony didn't want to do that because he felt like taking that shot this early and like he maybe could gain those said strong people as like people he could trust from other teams throughout the season if he saves them. I have a hard time just believing that he was so like gung-ho a strategic standpoint. I just think he just didn't want to be there and just like pretty much sandbagged it.
Yeah, I mean, so what really confused me was during the episode, they're trying to push two narratives, and I would buy either of them, but I can't buy both of them in tandem. So they're trying to tell me that like Tony's just really stubborn and he wants to steamroll the women, and he thinks that Avery's just going to cave to his needs. But we're also given this storyline that he wants to quit. And I kind of believe the latter, but like you could convince me that he's just really stubborn and wants to steamroll Avery's opinion if you didn't introduce the seed of doubt that is him wanting to quit. So I'm really confused, and I don't know what to believe because the episode left me with nothing concrete. What I have heard in interviews is that, and these are interviews with Tony, Tony kind of wanted more than anything to appease Darrell. He wanted to give Darrell the opponents that he wanted, perhaps to make Darrell an ally moving down the road, which I guess makes some sense, but like, I think the best ally he has in this game is Bananas. So keeping Bananas' team big and strong is going to help Tony in the long run. It should.
Yeah. My thing, though, is I think that, like, and also, too, I wanted to kind of address this because I kind of saw this narrative being, like, thrown around. And, like, some of the cast is kind of trying to frame it this way. And I don't agree with this at all. Maybe I'm wrong and others will have their opinion, but I just don't see it this way. I saw a lot of people cast-wise trying to frame it like Tony... I'm trying to use my words wisely here because I don't want to, like, put people on blast necessarily. But it did seem like people were almost trying to, like, make it seem like Tony was, like, overriding a girl's opinion. Like, they were trying to make it seem like he was, going against his, like, they kept saying girl partner, trying to make it like it was a guy-girl thing, where it's like, I just don't really see it that way. I just think it could have been another guy up there with Tony, and I don't think it would have mattered if, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they were trying to make it seem like, I'm not trying to say misogyny, so to speak, but the way, like, people, like, I've seen people like, you know, Ryan Kehoe on social media, and, like, maybe even Rachel, I don't know, but, like, yeah, I think it was Rachel, that they were publicly saying, like, oh, Tony, like, you know, going and, like, putting his female partner in jeopardy, blah, blah, blah. Like, trying to make it seem like it was a guy-girl issue. And, like, almost like Tony didn't respect a girl's opinion. But, like, I don't really see it that way, personally. Like, again, maybe I'm just not seeing it that way. But I just think, regardless of which gender was his partner in that other decision with him, I don't think it really would have made a difference. Had you put a guy there and the guy who's voting the same way as Avery, I think Tony does the same exact thing.
Yeah, I think that they were just kind of like dumbstruck by Tony's decision because it really doesn't make sense. And they're trying to rationalize it in every way possible. So in the episode, like, you see Laurel and Avery and Jenny talking about how Avery's really headstrong and she's not going to back down, and Tony thinks that he can steamroll her opinion. And I understand that at that point in time, because they don't know where Tony's head is, but then it kind of seems like he just wanted to leave, and he was going to disagree with whomever he needed to get into that elimination as a way out. At least I can understand that narrative. But after the fact, I just don't see why Tony would really need, like, there's no benefit in silencing Avery. There's no need for it. So, like, I don't necessarily think it's him trying to overpower a woman, more so that he had his own intentions that may have been taboo to talk about because they were kind of contract violations if he wanted to quit. And he wanted to get his money.
Yeah. And, you know, who knows? It's kind of been left rather ambiguous because, you know, Tony's kind of been trying to still save face on social media, seemingly a little bit. I mean, I haven't like, really checked out, like, interviews. I saw his post, though, that he's made, like, last week. And, like, he kind of tries to make it seem like he didn't throw this thing. I mean, at least from what I saw on social media, and tries to, like, you know, give his justification for everything. So I don't really know, but to me, that elimination looks like a guy who threw it, and they tried their best edit-wise to like make it look like he was just an idiot.
I will say this though, you know, we've seen Tony. We haven't seen him for a while, but one of my favorite versions of Tony is the Tony that comes in and for no reason whatsoever causes a lot of drama and then gets sent home. And that's kind of what we saw, and I think that's kind of fun. I can appreciate that. So at least if he was going to go out, he went out in not a blaze of glory, but a blaze of something, a blaze of disaster, a train wreck, if you will.
Which, I mean, you know, in Tony fashion of the past, which would be right in his wheelhouse.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anyways, folks, you know, you got the gist of what we just talked about. Essentially, that sparked the topic for this week's video is dumbest decisions in challenge history, because through the lens of, let's say, he didn't throw it, that would go down as one of the dumber moves. And yeah, so that sparked you know, today's topic, which is going to be, you know, diving down this rabbit hole and you know, discussing the biggest and dumbest decisions in the show's history. So, am I still here?
Yes, I can see you, but you looked like you were talking into a Motorola Razr for a couple of minutes or a couple of moments. It was just very, very grainy.
Yeah, I might have, for all we know.
Yeah,
no,
but your T-Mobile sidekick to talk to me.
Yeah, something along those lines. My BlackBerry device. Without before we get into the actual selections that we have, did you have anything you'd like to add before we get started?
Not particularly. You know, I love a good mess on the show. So as much as some of these decisions are dumb in retrospect, I still appreciate the people who gave us the TV.
Truly. Well, I could kick us off. Tried to go in chronological order from, like, you know, earliest to latest season of the ones I chose. And I'm going to go with a popular season that everybody loves, which is the Duel 1. And I'm actually going to go with Tyler choosing to go against Johnny Bananas in that first elimination. I mean, I get it, like, to the time period. Like, you're on a reality show. Like, the challenge isn't really, like, we were getting there in terms of, like, the competition level being, like, you know, brought up a bit. But so I can understand Tyler's point of view, like, not really, like, looking at this, like, super, you know, serious at the time when he made this selection, because he kind of was just, like, willy-nilly, like, oh, you know, we're going to be gunned for anyway. Might as well go against each other. Ha, ha, ha. But, like, if he actually, like, thought it through, it makes no sense for him to choose Johnny. They're the only two rookie guys, and you could literally choose anybody up there and, one, save Johnny as a potential ally, because they're the only two that, like, will look out for each other. And two, if you somehow win and take out a strong player, like, I mean, they had the crapshoot elimination with the what was it, ICANN? You had to, like, lift the watermelon. Like, say he called out CT, and CT, you know, in, like, 2004, 5, whatever year it was, is just like, oh, this guy's weak, probably can't lift this much, and then, like, goes home on the first elimination. You know what I mean? Like, he could have called out, like, literally anybody and won on a crapshoot, potentially. So I just think that was a really stupid decision, but I reasoned with Tyler at that time, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think putting myself in his shoes a little bit, that cast was really weird in the sense that we didn't know how Fresh Meat was going to be treated coming into this game, because they all had, like, one season before this, but they had no origin season. But I think just inherently going into a show like that, where you automatically have a clique of 4 people from Key West, your real world season, like, stay together, ride together. Like, if you don't need to break up, don't do it. And like we may never see like such a big cohort again come from one feeder source, but if you are so lucky to have someone from the same background show as you, don't betray them. Like, keep the allies you have. It's not enough. Like, I remember at the beginning of the show, Tyler was like, all the girls are going to pick me. We're going to be singing the same Madonna songs together. I'm like, the show's not that flimsy.
Yeah, I don't think Tyler, like, didn't really think it through, like, through the lens of, like, oh, I'm in a game, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think he viewed it as just another real world, like, with, you know, like, game show, like, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't really have, like, the same, like, focus level as he would have on, like, a Cutthroat or, like, a Rivals 1 type Tyler.
Yeah. And, you know, also, it is the first elimination. We don't know how much they actually knew about the game. Like, now, the first elimination, you know the game is going to change later into the season. But back then, they generally had, like, a decent understanding, but it still wasn't, like, concrete as to what the rules of the game were going to be a couple weeks down the road. So maybe he thought it would benefit him.
Yeah. Well, the floor is yours to fire away here.
So this is one of my favorite stupid decisions. It's just comical. And this is from the Inferno 2 in the Time to Ride challenge, where Julie decides to just go straight down the middle, give it the old college shot, saying that the road to God is straight and narrow. And about 2 inches into the middle path, she tips over and falls into the water and disqualifies. And it was stupid on like so many levels because the good guys had a shot of winning that challenge. Because I think Rachel had just disqualified before that, and she went a long way and fell in the wire. And Julie, her ass was on the line. She was going to go into the Inferno if she didn't win, which she didn't win, and then she had to face Tanya in the Inferno, and she went home. So she like made such a dumb decision, and all she got in the end was laughed at.
Well, I mean, from Julie, nonetheless. I mean, that's not exactly something too out of the ordinary.
I mean, I love her on the show for a reason, and that exemplifies it perfectly.
I think, I mean, I don't know if it'll happen, because, I mean, who knows, like, you know, whether or not we're going to get to a 6th All-Stars or even where their production head space is going to be at with casting. I feel like it'd be a crime to not get her on one more challenge.
And from what I understand, she wants to do it. She, like,
she was not supposed to be on All-Stars 1. Or,
yeah.
Or was it, yeah, it was 1. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's, like, actually Anissa, but she made it seem like it was Anissa who took her spot.
She had, like, childcare lined up to go to wherever it was. No, it wasn't Panama. Can't remember where they filmed it, but she was going to go there.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm just fortunate that, like, you know, if we were missing out on Julie, at least we got, like, sort of like a fair, you know, trade-off with somebody who's universally loved and is going to bring a lot to the table with Anissa, you know? Oh, wait.
Okay.
Maybe, well, no. I think never mind, guys. Anyways.
I mean, even if you do love her, she was on the flagship show. Like, we weren't at a loss of Anissa.
We actually need to have a discussion about this now that I just brought this up. Do you feel like, because when it comes to Anissa, do you feel like with her, I mean, I get why, I mean, anybody who continues receiving phone calls and wants to, you know, get paid probably pretty handsomely in her case because she's got a big role now. I mean, she covers the show for them and does it. So you have to imagine she's getting, you know, probably a pretty big bag. So more power to her. I totally get why she does it. But from like from the perspective of like continuing to come back, do you feel like she's, I don't want to say hurt her legacy, but almost like hurt her aura and how like she was kind of viewed like for a while with the fans? Because I did feel like there was a time period, certain times, where like she kind of was maybe like I would say this coming on to Total Madness. I feel like at that point in time, she was probably about 85% liked.
Oh yeah.
Like I was very excited when she did Total Madness. Like when I saw the cast list that she was going to be on it, I was like hyped about it. You know.
Yeah, the thing about Anissa before Double Agents was that she would do 1 or 2 seasons, take a couple off. And even though she wasn't like cream of the crop every time, you always kind of hoped that she had like put in the effort and put in the work, and she would come back in better shape and, you know, make it to the end or make a real dent in the competition. And then we saw her season after season on Double Agents, All Stars 1, Spies, Lies, and Allies, Ride or Dies, all that stuff. And we saw the amount of work that she put in between the seasons, and we just, you know, weren't impressed. And I agree with you. Like, if I was a cast member, I get the call, I want to go, I'm taking the money. But from a production standpoint, you kind of have to wonder what they're paying for.
Yeah. I mean, if I was... No, I'm not going to... actually, I will say. I don't feel like they're currently getting a bang for their buck. Maybe from, like, a podcasting perspective, I think she has some to offer there. But, like, when you're simultaneously doing shows while also, like, covering it, I feel like the lines get blurred a lot. That's why I didn't really enjoy that they had Tori and her both be the podcasting hosts at the beginning, simply because they're both, like, very integral still, so they're going to be kind of biased. Like, that would be like if... like, Tom Brady, like, you know, was, like, announcing, like, other people's games, like, while he's also, like, actively still playing for a team, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of is like, how fair could that really be? And you're not going to get as authentic and, like, unbiased as of an opinion as you would get if you, say, got, like, a, you know, this is obviously shooting darts at, like, nothing, but, like, Coral, for example, like, no chance it would happen, but if the, you know, Cinderella shoe fit that one particular evening, she would provide you with something unfiltered, but also objective, because she has no stake in the game, whereas, like, you know, with Anissa and Tori, it's like, what do you really expect?
Yeah, I mean, if Anissa wasn't on the show, she'd be perfect for the podcast, because, I mean, she's likable. A lot of people get along with her, but she understands how the show has evolved because she's been a part of it for so long. And, you know, I remember listening to an interview for All Stars 4, and she was on it with Adam, and she remembered Adam, and most people wouldn't. So, like, she has that experience, but at this point, it's not enough to make an impact on the game physically, but she's socially very intertwined with the show, and a podcast or something like a hosting gig is right in her wheelhouse.
Yeah. I think it might be the time to transition into that full-time role, honestly. But, you know. Yeah, I'll go next. We've got, you know, unfortunately I had to choose this one. It was too much to pass up, unfortunately. God rest her soul. But Diem choosing Paula and Dunbar for the second to last elimination, I believe, on X's 1 instead of throwing in Johnny and Camilla. I don't feel like this was the right call, and I feel like throwing Johnny and Camilla in would have been much more beneficial and probably, you could argue, wins CT and Diem that season. You know, Diem's ex, and even TJ told Diem too, like, that's a really stupid decision. Because I think, honestly, I think Ty and Emily would have beaten Camilla and Johnny in that particular elimination. It was a kind of a variation of the you remember you obviously know the elimination that Adam King supposedly, like, might have thrown, right? Mm-hmm. Like that. The elimination was similar to that, except there wasn't a ramp. Like, it was just like they had, it was like honestly a little bit Hall Brawl-esque, but it was like there was like hay, like, you know, like barn, like hay, like like as like kind of the divider, and you had to like run and put balls into the other person's thing and run past each other. Emily beats Camilla. I'm confident in that. And then, I mean, you know, Ty and Johnny, listen, you know, people might automatically assume like, oh, Ty flops when it matters most, blah, blah, blah. He didn't flop that season. So, maybe in the final he did in the dailies, but in terms of eliminations, he did not flop that season. And I feel like in that particular elimination that requires solely just sprinting for a little bit quickly, it's not like he would have had to have like this crazy set of endurance to like go super. It wasn't a super long elimination. It was just kind of like ready, go, and then it's over within a couple of minutes. Like, I think he might have been able to take Johnny in that, truthfully. Like,
yeah, it's funny because on my list, I actually have as like one of my maybe possibly things to talk about was the final elimination of X's one, where they picked Johnny and Camilla over. Or sorry, they picked Mark and Robin
over Ty and Emily. Yeah, which Ty and Emily would have went into pole wrestle against.
Now, the only thing I'll say about the one that you had discussed is I actually think that if I was in DM's shoes, if I was in DM's shoes, I wouldn't want to run against Paula in the final because she's really good at long distance. Like that's her specialty, from my perspective, and I think people recognized that, especially after Rivals won. But also, I mean, I'd probably rather run against Paula than Emily. So I don't know. But yeah, I think that they kind of fumbled those last two eliminations. They had
kind of like a really, really good shot to make something really big happen for themselves, and they kind of missed. I would say they whiffed, possibly, if you look at it logistically on like both opportunities. Really, I mean, you know, they still honestly almost won despite that in the final itself, but they would have given themselves a really, really comfortable chance of winning.
Totally.
Had they gone certain routes, but you can go ahead with your next one.
So this one I think is kind of universally viewed as one of like the biggest "what are you doing" decisions. On the Ruins, the one time the challengers won, they had a team where Brianna, Casey, and I can't remember the third person, were in the captain.
Kimberly?
Probably Kimberly, yeah.
Yeah.
And Brianna volunteers herself to go into the elimination against Susie. And, you know, as we would see throughout the season, Casey is the anchor of the team. But, like, you knew episode 3 that Casey was going to be protected by the champions the whole season.
Yeah.
Like, anyone with any knowledge of the show knows that they were going to do to Casey what the rookies did to Big Easy on the Gauntlet 3. They were going to keep her around to hope that she sandbags the team. So it was such a missed opportunity not to put Casey into that elimination. And not only did Brianna get her only flight home from the challenge, but she doomed her team to have Casey the whole time.
Well, that's actually a deep cut. I commend you for thinking of that one.
I think about it way too much.
Well, probably so does Brianna, too, because that's all she's had to think about when it comes to her time on the show. She's actually another one who wants to come back, believe it or not.
I'd love it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she would fit All-Stars like a glove. I think I don't remember when she tried, but they told her, like, she contacted, like, one of the producers. I don't know if it was how recent it was, because, I mean, this was, well, when I interviewed her, this was creeping up on about a year now. And she told me this. So she told me this a year ago. I don't know if what the timeline of that looks like, but it was definitely within like the past 4 years. I know that she contacted this person. They told her at that time that she was too much of a mix between like that she was she was young enough but not too young but also too old, like you know what I mean, like she was too young for like All Stars at the time, but then like too old for the flagship, and now it's like
maybe she contacted them and they were casting for All Stars 3 and they couldn't like let the twist out of the bag that they wanted to have all winners. That's just me throwing production a bone and being like, hey, there might have been another variable that we haven't talked about. But yeah, that makes no sense in any other situation.
You know what I would give to have some real world Hollywood representation, and I'm not talking about Nick Brown. I would kill to have some real world Hollywood representation of the challenge in any way, shape, or form. I feel like people wouldn't even know what to do with themselves, cast included. It would almost feel like a Bigfoot sighting, you know?
I would love, and I'm not even joking when I say this, to see Dave come back. Because all he did was quit the island. But, like, are you really that much of a loser if you quit the island? I don't blame you for bouncing out of there. I don't care if you wanted, to cuddle with your girlfriend. I don't care if you wanted a milkshake. Like, there was no good to be found on that island for a rookie. So,
you know how unserious, like, this would have never happened in a million, like, the chances of this happening would have been like 0.1111%, but in a world in which it does, let me put on my tinfoil cap, you know how unserious of a moment would have been for them to bring Dave back on the show and, like, put him on Total Madness, and they're like, yeah, you're not going to be on an island anymore. He's in a bunker, he's like, what the fuck is this fucking show? Could I just go back?
That would just be like a big old FU to him. They'd be like, you want to be indoors? Well, that's all you get.
Yeah, that's all you get, pal. No real sunlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, my next one's... Actually, I'll save my next one for the last one since it's not that exciting of a choice. It's more so just like beating a dead horse. So I'll skip that. Actually, you know what? I don't even really need to get into what it is because we've already discussed it ad nauseum, and it's been discussed ad nauseum. You'll probably know what I'm talking about, but it was the Zach stepping off the platform thing. Yeah.
You mean Final Reckoning?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's not really much else for me to add on that one. It just was obviously one of the ones that came to me. I'm trying to rack my brain, and I had one actually. So I'll substitute this in. I'm not going to talk about this at length either because it's very obscure, like within the lore of the show. Like it was inconsequential, to be honest. There was one daily challenge on Dirty 30, and it was the one where they were inside this like Coliseum thing. And it was basically like a hall brawl daily challenge. It was the one they always used on like the Final Reckoning, like Dirty 30 promo ones where you see like Anissa and Jenna running in the hall and like Anissa like, runs in and Yeah. It was that daily challenge, and they they randomly picked captains, like who would pick the teams or whatever, like out of a hat. And it was Dario and Kayla were the two captains. And, you see a hallway in the middle with a narrow hall space. Fucking, like, Kayla had the first pick. And Johnny even said it in his confessional, too. Like, Kayla, once again, shows that, the lights are on, but nobody's home. Like, basically calling her stupid. She has the first pick in, like, essentially a hall brawl daily challenge. And picks Derek K., which, Derek's obviously a feisty little competitor. He's a strong guy. He's good with, like, pole wrestle. But in a thing like Hall Brawl, when you've got guys like CT, Hunter, and Leroy there, who at that point in time were just like meaty men. Even Corey and Nelson were like just more meatier than like Derek would have been. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then it's so funny because Dario follows it up by like immediately picking CT and Hunter with his next two picks, and Kayla's like, "I'll take Derek, Jordan, Bananas." Yeah. So you look at like their two teams, and it's like Dario's team. He has Hunter, CT, Leroy, and Corey, and Anissa. And Kayla's team is literally like Derek K, Jordan, Ammo. Like it's like
Yeah, I remember that. I thought about it, it weighed on my mind because Dario, he's a very, very smart competitor, and he knew what he had to do. I remember his confessional. He's like, I picked CT because he eats, breathes, and sleeps pasta. Like he's done nothing to eat
word
pasta.
for word. Yeah.
So that was definitely not the brightest, not Kayla's brightest moment, but am I surprised? No.
She's had quite a few not so very bright moments.
Yeah.
But no. Anyway, okay. Yeah, no, I guess that would. I guess should I count that as my one then? And then if you want to go, I don't know.
Well, this one is probably, I don't know if it's a deep cut or if a lot of people agree with it, but I think it's episode 8 of War of the Worlds 2. It's the episode where both Georgia and Kyle go into elimination, and Georgia returns and Kyle doesn't. And I'm like, I think it was so dumb for Georgia to go back to the UK team. She would have done so much better with the US team, where she has people like Jordan and she has people like Zach and Josh and I don't know what Nani. I don't know who else was on the team at the time, but they were actively going against the big alliance with Kara and Kaylee and all them. Like Georgia actually could have like tipped the scales in her favor if she had made that decision, and she didn't, and she had every opportunity, and then she got sent home by Tori. Oh yeah, Tori would have worked with her too. So I don't think it gets talked about that much, but if only she had become a turncoat.
Well, I mean, yeah, there was quite a few moments on War of the Worlds 2 where scales could have been tipped, but they were basically playing like not in this particular instance, but the Kara and Paulie voodoo really ran strong on that one.
Yeah, it sticks out as exceptionally dumb to me because not only was Georgia returning after being sent into 2 eliminations, but it was one of the few double eliminations that we had that season. So she knows her ally Kyle is going home. She knows the numbers are dwindling on the UK team, and she's going to be put in a real shitty spot. So if she went back, and I think Theo beat Kyle, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I can't stream the show to verify this, but if they both went to the US team, I mean that would have changed the game.
Unreal. Well, I'm going to go to the following season. This is total madness. So we obviously know Dave made his long... No. I'm going with Wes throwing himself in against Bananas. They finally work together, and I get it. Like, the whole, like, how many opportunities you're going to have to go and get a skull, blah, blah, blah. If you saw, like, the logistics behind that, it really wasn't that smart in the grand scheme of things, honestly. Which part of me, devil's advocate, it feels like some type of deal might have been potentially cut, or I think not even necessarily a deal being cut, as much as like Bananas and West potentially putting their show caps on and just thinking like, what's something really like interesting that we could just make a good show out of and give the fans something. Like maybe that was their thought process. They decided to be showmen. I don't know. We'll never really probably know. Or maybe we will somewhere down the line. I don't know. But through the lens of let's just assume Wes was making a game move, this was such a bad decision on his part because he was pretty much control. I would say Wes up to that point was controlling the game and playing really well in the dailies. So I think that, you know, considering how well he was connected that season with having Bananas, I mean, he had the secret alliance with Sway Lee going on. Corey and Nelson seemed to be kind of, you know, on his side, at least one would think. I think he was really well connected, and there's a world in which if he qualifies for that final, I think, no, I'm actually going to say it. I think if Wes doesn't throw himself down there, I think he wins Total Madness. In my personal opinion. You know, I think that had he waited even a week, maybe 2 weeks, he goes in against either maybe Swaggy in like a light touching competition, the one that Corey beat him in, or if he makes the smart choice, he goes into Not So Fast against Josh. So, you know, I think he really shot himself in the foot by doing that, and I think if he played it a little bit smart and waited a week or two, he wins a skull, but would then go walk to the final and win that season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I love the conspiracy theories, and this moment has always set off my bullshit radar, because it seems like Wes had just gotten like $15,000 from Burger King, which I don't know why they're giving $15,000 to the challenge. I mean, it kind of sucks for Burger King because they paid him $15,000 during a competition that aired during the pandemic when the Burger Kings were closed. But hey, it happened. But there's always been something kind of like fishy about that to me. But even on Total Madness, I only fault people so much for making dumb decisions to go in. Because like even like CT, I don't think CT threw that elimination against Jay. But I think the fact that he got the fuck out of there as quickly as he did was just like a big benefit for him. Because he didn't have to stick around. Like he wanted to get his skull soon or go home soon that season. Yeah. And I kind of feel the same way with Wes. Like he didn't want to make it deep into the competition, go home later, and lose to a Josh or a Swaggy C. At least there's some pride in losing to Bananas. It's like an epic showdown, but if you say that you lost the challenge and Bananas beat you, people aren't going to look at you the same way as we look at Mishi, who lost to Josh. You know? So, still think it was a dumb move, don't get me wrong. But I can see some logic in Wes's decision.
Honestly, I think Michi should come back.
No. No, he can stick to wherever he's doing on Pornhub.
Yeah, right. You know who, speaking of Michi, you know who actually we never saw again, but apparently we came close to on 37? This might be a little bit of a deep, not really a deep cut, but like, you know, name out of thin air that we haven't heard in a while. Do you remember Liv from Double Agents? The one that, did she get hurt and go home, I think, right?
Yeah, she like hurt her shoulder
against like Tori or somebody like that.
I think yeah, it was Tori
on that truck.
It was Cam broke Nicole's shoulder, or not broke, but like sprained, dislocated.
Yeah.
And then Tori did it to Liv.
Yeah, I thought Liv had a lot of potential.
Yeah, what a dumb challenge. Like sometimes you just look at them and you're like, the way this challenge works, the way physics work. And if they don't line up, you probably shouldn't do it that way. But, hey.
Well, because you had, like, no security, and, like, you were throwing them onto a net off a moving, like, fucking truck. And that net had, like, no give. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you should have at least, like, had them, like, harnessed or something to where at least, like, when they, like, fall, like, you know, they, like, kind of have, like, some resistance, so they don't just, like, they're not, like...
I mean, that challenge just shouldn't have been on a truck. I don't know why we need to have that on a moving semi-truck. Like, put them on a platform over the water.
Yeah. They were like in their midlife crisis. They're in like their midlife crisis era of casting, or well, yeah, casting as well, but like just production ideas. Well, they still kind of are to an extent, but
yeah,
at that time it was just like some like, you know, somebody in their like basement was playing too much like Spy Kids or something like that, or watching too much Spy Kids, and just came up with a bunch of like really bad ideas during the pandemic.
I don't know.
Well, speaking of the spy, I might as well just give you my last one now. Nani choosing Kyle over CT.
I have that one too.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
So yeah, I mean, another one that just sets off my bullshit meter. Something doesn't pass the smell test there.
Yeah, I believe we talked about this in a conspiracy video.
Yeah.
So for those that are late to the party, we've got that video on the channel as well. I believe that one was under. Yeah, I think that was under the conspiracies video that we did, which is actually our most viewed podcast that we've done since doing these types of videos. So yeah, if you guys want to go check that out, go ahead and knock your socks off. But with that being said, I think that was it, right? We don't have any.
I have one more.
Oh, you have one? Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to hear it out? It's a recent one. It's one of the fastest instances of someone getting their just desserts, and it's on All Stars 4. Right after Adam votes in Steve, who apparently is his good friend, Steve goes into the elimination and steals Adam's star. Which, you know, Adam infamously tells Steve to sit on it and spin, which I kind of loved. I loved the pettiness of it. Like, that was a level of drama that we hadn't seen in a while. But that was definitely, I'm sure watching it back, Adam was kicking himself a little bit. And the weird thing about it is they do all this to protect Ryan. Ryan has to go in at some point. Like, Ryan chooses not to go in, and then he goes into the purge thing at the end, and he loses. Like, it didn't benefit anyone other than, I mean, not even Steve. No, there were no winners here.
Well, who knows? You know, depending on some certain themes in the future, if they ever go back to a rivals theme, maybe it did benefit them.
I mean, maybe, but it could have benefited them right there. It could have made, you know, Adam could have run that final if he didn't mess around.
Yeah, I think Adam probably does pretty well in that final, too. I mean, I don't know how much the outcome changes, considering people, for whatever reason, had to stick up their ass that day and decide to give Laurel a bunch of stars for God knows what reason. You know, maybe that outcome remains the same, but...
Yeah, I would have loved if Steve stole Nicole's star and gave it to Avery or whomever he wants. Flora, I don't really care. But
well, Flora still ends up quitting, doesn't she?
I mean, probably. Who cares?
The stars just like goes back into like no man's land, kind of like.
But then we get like, you know, in this hypothetical situation, we get the final purge where Nicole and Laurel are running. So would have been cool, didn't happen.
Yeah, cool things aren't the norm no more. But with that being said, people, that was another edition of this podcast. I believe we're about 30 minutes into this episode as we're recording this. So, well, not our episode, I should preface. I mean, like the challenge episode. We're recording this on a Wednesday night, and in real time, the challenge is started 28 minutes ago. But, you know, give or take with all the damn commercials, we probably only missed about 10 of those minutes. So, yeah, you know, put that on.
You know, we're going to miss the recap. You know, after the first commercial break, we always have someone, usually Casey, who comes on and re-explains what the challenge is. So,
yeah, because that's, you know, a designated job.
Yeah.
Alrighty. See you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.